myself from the side. Well, now I do a little bit, a little bit. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a audio test for mic number 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Mic check, audio test for mic number 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Audio test for mic number 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Audio test for mic number 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Audio test for mic number 4. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Audio test for mic number 4. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. It's getting there. Mic check for mic number 4. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Audio test for mic number 4. This is a audio test for mic number 14. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, welcome. I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting of March 20th, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'll ask Mr. Rowe for a reiteration of the executive session motions.
We entered executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular person, as well as the proposed acquisition, sale, exchange, or lease of real property.
Yeah, welcome to everybody. Sorry, I think we're running a little bit late. We've had a very exciting afternoon since 3:30, digging into our strategic planning, getting to see the results of some of the surveys, focus groups. Very exciting. Some surprises, some reaffirmations of things that we were already thinking. I think Dr. Champ's going to speak a little bit about some adjustments in our process to make sure that we have the right people, the right expertise, really subject matter expertise from administrators, teachers, principals that are really going to be tasked with implementing this. So we want to make sure that they're at the table. I also just wanted to update the community on the stormwater project. At our last meeting, we authorized some representatives to negotiate with the village of Pelham, and Sid, Will, Jackie have been entered into that negotiation. And I think, so we thank them for their time and work on that.
So that brings us to main event of tonight. I'll speak, as Michael said, when we get to my report later, I'll bring a little bit more to light about how the board and cabinet, and we've all spent our afternoon together. Look forward to sharing some of that. But tonight we're really excited to have with us members of the administrative team, business office, here to go to the next step of our line-by-line review of our budget. So tonight we'll be hearing about the athletics budget, the PPS budget, and staffing portions of the budget. So Jim, anything you wanted to add in preface to that?
Thank you. No, again, as you mentioned, we've got those items. We've had a couple of finance committee meetings since the last meeting, and I think we've spent some time reviewing what was discussed at the last meeting and a little bit about what's going to be discussed this evening. And again, any board members have any questions or concerns or thoughts on the budget too, please, obviously you've got your committee members, but also reach out to the business office.
Okay. Who's first on the list?
We've got an order of our order for this evening starts with special education, page C18 through C19. And it's special education, counseling, health service, psychology, and then interscholastic athletics, and we'll finish up with staffing this evening. So first was special education, pages C18 to C19.
Okay. Just real fast, is anybody here for public comment?
I don't think so.
No, okay, thanks. Just checking. Take it away.
Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to go through the line by line for the PPS budget, actually People Personnel Services, what I'm going to talk about tonight. Under the umbrella of People Personnel Services, special education is a big part of that, but I'm also going to go through the counseling lines and I'll go through the nursing lines. So you'll get a sense of everything that are in the numbers. So I'll start with the biggest part of it, though, which is special education. And in the narrative, there's actually a couple of updates in the narratives that are in your book. Special education is a landscape that changes quite frequently. And I believe it was 2 weeks ago that I met with the Finance Committee to go through some information, and that's actually old news already, because we've already had additional people register, additional special education, CPSE students register, and the landscape just changes almost daily. We are in the middle of annual review season, so we do our best to try to make predictions and projections as to what we think will happen, but by law, we're not allowed to predetermine the outcome of every meeting. So Greg, Lauren, and I, and the individuals that chair these meetings do the best to read our tea leaves and make predictions, but it's hard to give exactitudes when it comes to these numbers. So you're going to see our best guesses today based on the data we have, based on trends that we see, and things that we see happening, unfolding currently.
Tracy, if I could just jump in a moment too. So very important, I think what Tracy has shared is that the budget's really developed kind of on where special education and PPS was in the January, February timeframe. But again, things are continuously changing. So through the budget process, we track these things. We communicate regularly with Tracy on where we are. And as the budget process unfolds, every year, usually there are some changes to that. So it's not unusual for there to be adjustments with the final budget, and we'll bring that, I would envision us bringing that first through committee and then sharing with the full board as well, kind of where that budget changes as we go through this process.
So one of the places I wanted to just start is sort of highlight in the narrative what are some of the big changes and trends that we're seeing that are driving some of the costs in the department. We have in the middle school and high school our therapeutic support programs, both in, is everything okay? You can hear me?
Yeah, no, it was my fault. My microphone was
Oh, okay.
picking up background noise.
And one of the trends that we're seeing right now is in our high school therapeutic support program, our numbers are quite high. Probably the highest they've been in the last 10 years from what I can get from historic data. So typically, we have about 16 or 18 students in that program. That program is supported by a designated special education teacher and one of the school psychologists, and those numbers are growing. I think that speaks to some of the trends that we are seeing in general about student mental health, issues that are impacting our student, still growing needs in that area. So that's something we are seeing as well here in Pelham. The other big trend that we're seeing that is sort of driving some of our budgetary costs is the growing number of preschool students that are enrolling with us. So in the world of preschool, you have EI, early intervention, which is birth through 3, and then CPSE, which is 3 through 5. This year, currently, between EI and CPSE, we have about 90 students. That's a vast increase from where the district was 5 years ago and 10 years ago. Last year, for example, we had 86 students. So we're seeing these growths, and we're only in March, and we have referrals that flow into CPSE world every day. So growing number of CPSE students, and the trend with those students is they are very high-need students. These aren't students necessarily transitioning in that just may need related services or just speech or OT. These are pretty significant cases with students with developmental disabilities, medical disabilities, high medical needs that are causing us to look at programs outside the district. We do have our elementary 812 program in Colonial. It's anticipated that it will be full next year, but even beyond that, we have more kids that would need that program. We looked at our projections, the possibility of having to open another class, but when we looked at the students that need that program, those are the ones that have that high medical developmental needs, and they will go likely to out-of-district program, which is where you'll see the growth in our tuition lines when we get there. So those are some significant trends that we're just seeing anecdotally, and I think that is consistent with what my colleagues are seeing, what I think Dr. Champ is seeing, hearing when she's talking to other superintendents. It's very similar across the landscape. So we'll start by jumping into the line by line. Just reorganize myself here. Okay.
So just to, you said the early intervention and committee on preschool special education. So that's like almost 100 students that aren't, or I guess students isn't the right word, but young children that don't show up necessarily in our enrollment numbers, but we're providing
Right, and we will.
very important services for them. Eventually, yeah.
And will
but-
be. So what happens is Dr. Ribeiro has the honor of handling all of those situations, right? Their services are paid by the county. But what's important about that is those numbers growing is, as Mr. Burke said, they will be ours. And these are high-need students, and their programs will be expensive programs because they have a lot of needs. They get a lot of services. So what you'll also see reflected in here is some projected increases for our contractual services with our OTs and PTs. Because as these students transition in and they have some developmental challenges, they get a lot of those services, a lot of speech. So the balloon is being stretched, and the trends that we're seeing is that is a growing population that is coming into our schools, these high needs kids. So they will be ours. So that's what's important about that as we try to project 2, 3, and 4 years what we're going to need. That makes sense? That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked about, thinking about having a second section. Is there a point where that's going to make more sense rather than finding out-of-district placements? Like, do we have visibility on, like a bulge in the population where it might make sense to
Right.
try and do
I think
that?
what we do is we watch the numbers, right? And we see where we are with numbers. So, right, if there's a tipping point, right, if we had 6 more students at this point, we would have to open another section. The challenge would be with that, too, is space.
Yeah, where? Yeah.
That's the other challenge. And these are students who typically need a classroom with a bathroom because they're on toileting schedules. These are typically classrooms that need space because a lot of the students are supported with additional one-to-ones. So you have a lot of adults in a room. So that's the challenge. So we're watching it and we're really trying to figure it out. And again, it's kind of like a puzzle, putting the puzzle pieces together. So right now, and the other challenge for us is we cannot anticipate who's going to move in. And since the Finance Committee met 2 weeks ago, Lauren got an email about a family moving in from Massachusetts. I got a family inquiring about moving here from the Bronx, like asking for guarantees about services. So it's very hard to know what's going to happen. And again, we got move-ins over last summer that drove costs for us this year that immediately before school started ate into our contingencies. We had a student that moved in that needed a one-to-one and had an FM system, had hearing needs. So it is so hard to predict. And I think Mr. Treves was in the Finance Committee with us. The challenge is when you also do good things, people want to be here. So I would say, and this is not on the shoulders of myself, this is what's, I think historically Pelham has had a very good reputation of having solid special education programs and pretty phenomenal special education teachers. So it's known with advocates. So you also have advocates that tell people to move into a community where they know they're going to get good resources. So it's kind of like, you're doing good things and then you get noticed, but then that leads to a lot of growth. And I know it's a financial driver, Jim doesn't like to see me when I come walking down the hallway. He tends to run the other way.
I like you, I like you.
So just starting with the line by line on C18, that very first line, is the teaching assistant salaries. We have 16 TAs this year in the budget. Next year, we're anticipating the addition of one more TA because we will have another co-teach class in Hutchinson, again, based on the incoming students for kindergarten next year. I think we have 35 CPSE students transitioning to kindergarten. Not every single one of those kids need programs. Some may get declassified along the way. Some may just need related services, but we have quite a number of them that will need integrated co-teach services. So we will have a kindergarten co-teach class next year, a first grade co-teach class next year, and our current fourth grade co-teach class in Hutchinson is reaching capacity. So we will have to split that into 2 sections next year.
And where are those kids in pre-K right now?
Various places, what would you say?
Some are in typical preschool, some are in center-based. Sorry, can you talk to the mic? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It varies. Some of them are in our typical preschool programs at like Huguenot, Mount Tom. Those
Yep.
are the kids who get related services or see it services. Other students with more high needs are in special ed preschool programs like Elizabeth Seton, the Keller School, those types of programs designed for that.
And as we think about strategic planning, how much do you think we should be thinking about pre-K, formal pre-K from the district?
I mean, as a CPSE chairperson, of course, I would love that. I think it's good for all of our kids. I see a lot of students who don't have the opportunity to go to preschool, and that only exacerbates a delay that's already there. So if they had the opportunity to do that, I think all the kids would benefit. So definitely something to look at in strategic planning.
And-
Is that a nice to have? Do you think that's an urgent? Do you think that's like crucial? Like how is it, how do you think about that?
Are you thinking about like universal pre-K, UPK, is that what you're thinking of?
I'm hearing that we have many kids that we're identifying at 4 years old that have issues that we know we're going to have to deal with in kindergarten. So just trying to get a sense
Yeah,
of
I
how
think-
much we should be thinking about
Yeah,
it.
I think in some situations, like the very complex kids, they're better in the specialized schools that can manage them, like an Elizabeth Seton or a Keller, right? Those are
Yep.
the schools that can really work with those students. You're talking about nonverbal students, autistic students. We have some of them in wheelchair-bound
Right.
students.
That we wouldn't likely be able to support those, right?
Right, that we wouldn't be able to. I know Dr. Champ and I have been talking a little bit about UPK and what that means, and we explored the idea of the people who might be interested in doing that with us would open up a special ed class, but it's different funding streams, so it gets a bit complex. So the other challenge too is in preschool, the county does pay for a lot of their services if they go to agencies and providers that fund that. So I don't know what the cost benefit would be solely for us. That would be something to think about. And I also don't know, based on our UPK funding, how many we could truly house. The number that we got when we spoke to the individual was maybe 40.
I think it's 48 to
40
60 max,
48 to
depending on
60.
how large they would run their
Right.
classes.
And the UPK wouldn't be targeted to,
No, that's my understanding of the.
Yeah,
be
it's-
kind of like
it's-
based on lottery
yeah.
or something
It's
like
general, but like I said to the gentleman, do you allow related service providers to come in and provide, and he said, yes, absolutely. What we would be looking more would be for opportunities like where we can, maybe have our own special class somewhere that we could feed Pelham students into, because the other challenge we have that we're finding is there's also a lot of limitations with the agencies and being able to provide service providers. There's a tremendous shortage. And that's the other challenge.
Yep.
So,
And do we have space for UPK anyway? No.
Not currently, no.
that would have to be like an off-site partnership, I think, with someone who would be willing to partner with us that does have space.
Right.
So again, starting at the line by line, we talked about the teaching assistants. The next line, 2250-150, that's the administrator salaries in my department. Then 151 and 152 are our elementary and secondary teachers, and those increase in those lines are driven by the contracts and the bargaining agreements. 153, that is CSE meeting support. That's summer meetings. That number I actually reduced. We really try to work very hard not to hold meetings over the summer, only in emergencies. Sometimes the reason you have to hold a meeting over the summer is if a referral comes in very late in the year, but it's very difficult because it's hard to get the right staff around the table. You want the student's teacher, you want the people that know the student best, and what happens is we get summer staff who are just available. So we try to avoid that at all costs. And I think last summer we did a pretty good job of wrapping things up and not having to do anything over the summer. 156 are our speech therapist salaries. We've got 5 speech therapists in the district, one in the middle school, one in the high school, one that is shared between Prospect and Siwanoy, and then one for Hutch and one for Colonial. The next line you find are the salaries are for the OTs and the PTs, and again, you're seeing increases. Those are contract providers, but you're seeing increases because I'm trying to predict for the kids coming in who are having increasing needs that we're going to have to provide services for them as well. In addition, if we have parents who choose to hold their students back, if they're K eligible, but the parents decide that they want to repeat another year in preschool, based on their age, their eligibility for preschool students end, so the county doesn't provide those services anymore, we have to. So then, we are now finding our contract providers who are now going to some of the preschools to provide OT, PT, and speech. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's fun. We have to do that too. So that's why some of those numbers, and I think we know we've got definitely a handful of students who, as we go through the meetings, we find out parents who are choosing to have their students repeat a year. And this has been, I think, an increasing trend since COVID, because students weren't able to have those typical early experiences that families would have normally enrolled their students in. So we're definitely seeing this delay in skills and abilities. So some parents just decide to have their students repeat a year, do a bridge year. Some of the programs have bridge. Mount Tom has a bridge class.
Yep.
So,
Red
but yeah,
shirting.
we're still responsible to provide services for those students. So that's why you see some increases in those numbers. 2250-160 is the 159 hearing impaired. So we also contract with Jenny Wallach. She's our teacher of the hearing impaired. We have several students in the district that either have FM systems, have hearing aids. Jenny's role is to make sure that all of those systems are set up. The teachers understand what happens with those systems. If an FM system, it's like a mic that they wear, and the student wears a device in their ear, so it's like an amplification. And you'll see in the equipment line, there's an increase there because we have a CPSE student moving in that's hearing impaired that we need to purchase a system for.
Oh, wow.
2 students will we need to purchase a system for next year. And they're could be anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 a system. And if it's a co-teach class, we have to buy 2. Then we have the clerical assistant salary, that's for the 2 secretaries in my office. And then 2250-163, those are the one-to-one monitors. We quickly, again, as I said, went through contingency this year on the monitors. We started with 24 with 2 contingents, so we're at 26. We're gonna build in 26, budget for 26 and build in 2 contingents. Again, these are things that it's hard for us to predict and plan for. We had another student, a kindergartner, who was not even classified this year, really struggled, classified, and then needed a lot of behavioral support. He was eloping and having difficulty managing, regulating himself. So he had a significant safety issue. If you go to C19, again, equipment, that increase in the equipment line from 5,000 to 10,000, that's that 2 FM systems that I have to purchase for the students coming in for next year. So that's what that increase is about. And then the next line is the contractual line. This is another area where we're going to see a jump. Why there's a jump in this line is our federal grant this year, our 611 grant, we did not receive as much money as we did the year before. So typically, what we put in the grant in Pelham is salaries, something called SEDCAR, which is flow-through money, and then whatever's left over additionally, we add in things like our consulting neuropsychologist, other contractual services. Because our grant was greatly reduced this year, we're anticipating that it will be the same next year, and we'll be able to fund the salaries and the SEDCAR, but there won't be anything left over. So the contractual monies and services that were in the grant last year are now in general fund. So that's some of the drivers why you see an increase in that line. In addition, what's in this line is like building bridges. That's a program that we do and we support. That's with Miss Ashley Matz, and she goes to buildings and does programming. So we support that in this line. This year also, we engaged in contract with Pelham Together. So that was an increase that was not in this line last year. And what we're utilizing that for is some additional social work interns that will help us. We don't have social workers at the elementary level. And also, we're seeing that we need to support some of our E&L families who are struggling a bit. So we're utilizing that, and in addition, they're doing a series of parent workshops for us throughout the year. So that's new in this line and was not in that line last year. So that's the big increase driver in this contractual line. We also have in this line our district consulting psychiatrists. So if we have a situation where we need to request a psychiatric evaluation, we have someone sort of on retainer from us. We also put in this line interpretation services. So if we need to have an interpreter at a CSE meeting, if we need, a nurse needs an interpreter, that's in this line contractually. We also contract with an agency called WIHD. So if we have students that need assistive technology evaluations, someone who maybe is nonverbal, but we need to figure out what's the right device to help them talk, whether it's a talker or a PEC system or something else. So that's what's built into this line. Okay. Then in the next line is home and hospital. I don't know if you recall last year we split this between all the money used to be in the counseling budget last year. We split it this year to track it a little bit better. It's the same total. I think we increased it $10,000 last year. So $25,000 is in my line, $25,000 is in the counseling line. This is for students who are on home instruction and maybe they have mono, they broke a leg, they have to be out for 6 weeks. We're required by law to provide home instruction services. This might be for a student who's on a long-term suspension. For whatever reason, we're required to provide home instruction. What's also in this number is if a student is hospitalized and has to go into a program, there are agencies that work with hospital programs, New York Presbyterian, Westchester Medical, and we are responsible for the academic portion of their day. So we will get billed back. Throughout the course of this year, we've had a number of students who've been hospitalized, and we'll get from them, this is your student, they've been admitted, you're required to pay for this. So that's what is in a home and hospital line. The next line, the 408, Committee on Special Education, that's a small number, that's just whether if we have to order the new school law book, whether we do professional trainings. During Superintendent Conference Day, we had someone from Frontline come in and do a PD with our teachers on progress monitoring and data collection. So we have a small amount of money in there for PD, and then thankfully, we also have Alice that helps us with some of our PD costs. The next line, 450, is materials and supplies. This number has gone up. What's in this line is, this is where we order all the materials for the psychologists, the special education teachers, the testing materials, any books we need, specialized books for reading at the elementary level and resource room. This is where we purchase like curriculum for some of the Foundations of Learning classes, Ms. Kate's class and Mr. Salasso's class. But again, we increased this a little bit because we're getting more referrals. So I need more testing materials. These are consumables. So once they're used, they're gone through, and we go through them again. This is also where we have our some of our licenses that our speech and language pathologists use, some of the programs that they use to work with kids. So that's what's in materials and supplies, and that's why there's an increase there. Then the big kahuna, the next three lines. These are our tuition lines for our students that are placed out of district. Of course, we always try to place students in the least restrictive environment and utilize our programs in-house first, but there are students that their needs are sometimes greater than what we can provide in-house. Currently, we have about 6 students that are in out-of-district programs. A majority of them, again, are in the programs for kids who are pretty medically compromised, wheelchairs, seizure disorders, feeding tubes, things of that nature, so they have to be in highly specialized programs. We also have a number of students who are in therapeutic support schools, so they really need a program that their mental health needs are such that they need to be in a program that is smaller and more catered to provide services for them throughout the day. We also, again, look at anticipating numbers based on where we think we have pressure points for students who we are trying to maintain here, but maybe looking at the trends and hospitalizations may need to go out. So we've had to build in some numbers for some of the students that we think may need more than we can provide next year. So we also have in this the 2 kindergarten kiddos that have to go to specialized programs as well automatically. The BOCES number looks like the largest, but again, I think you need to think about this as one bucket, because when we look for programs for students, and I do an out-of-district search, I cast a net, and I try to make a referral to a program based on what I know the student needs and what I know the program specializes in. Sometimes that's New York State-approved private schools, sometimes that's BOCES programs. We cast a wide net too because we refer a student doesn't mean a program has space, doesn't mean a program feels that our student is a fit based on their current census of students. So it's a challenge to try to find the right spot. So these numbers can vary. You know, some of the BOCES numbers may flip into the private line because those are the schools that are accepting our students. But overall, I think the takeaway message is we projected growth here because we know that we're going to have we know the 2K students that have to go out immediately, but we also have students that we're watching that we feel we anticipate may need to go. Did you want to add anything, Jim,
Yes,
here?
thank you. And again, I think that kind of refers to what I was sharing with the board before Tracy started as far as watching this budget as we go through the process. Also in Appendix 5, there's the detail on the BOCES spend. So I know we went through that at the first budget review meeting, but just to remind the board that it's there. So all that detail is there. It's just not a large number without that greater detail. I want to make sure that that's there. But as Tracy spoke, when the budget's built, there's 2 contingent positions that are forecasted. At this point in time, those positions are spoken for. So that's part of, as we track these things, as we work through the budget and come back to the board, the recommendation we've had over the years is that you want to start the year with some contingent positions because people move in. And you need to be able to react to that without impacting other program.
What's also specifically in the BOCES line too, that I want to also highlight is there are other things that are in there. A lot of our other contractual services, so like our ICT coaching, that's a cross-contract with Putnam Northern BOCES. That's in this number as well.
Tracy, what does ICT stand for?
Integrated co-teach, yes. And then also in the cross-contract, we have the consultation for our agency that we work with who does our TSP programs in the middle school and high school, our dialectical behavioral therapy, our DBT programs. So that consultation contract is in here as well. We have also something in here called BASIS services through BOCES, before and after school intervention services. Those are for our school avoiding kids, our kids who are struggling to get into school. We contract with BOCES to send a clinician to try to go to the home and support a family to work with what might be happening in the morning to help support get students to school. Also in here, we have some students that need vision services, TVI, teacher of the vision interventionist, and vision consulting. So we have a couple of students that are visually impaired. So we also contract with BOCES for those services. And the last big thing in here is our behavior consultation services, our BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst. And that is someone who works with the students that are in our special classes, our 812s, in Miss Rodriguez's class, in Miss Lane Eliaspi's class, the F Foundations of Learning Kids. And those are also who help with some of our other students who might be struggling on a behavioral level, and we need some additional support to kind of analyze what's going on, what are the triggers, and come up with a plan. So that's also in this number. So it's a chock-full number, the BOCES number, but a lot of great services that support our programming and why we're able to do the good work that we can do with our students. So that brings us now to 2810. That's the counseling codes, formerly known as guidance, but we don't say that anymore. The PC term is counseling. So the first line there, 150, that is for the salary in there. And again, a lot of that increase is due to the contract and the collective bargaining, agreements that happen with contractual raises. 154 is a stipend. A lot of work happens with our counselors at the end of school and the beginning of school. So after rating day and after all the region scores come in, then the counselors are still here doing final transcripts and report cards. That's the time that they're working on who may have to go to summer school, who may have to do a credit recovery, who may have to take a Regents over the summer. And then also they come in contractually earlier for several days to make sure that kids' schedules are in place and ready for the start of school. So that's what that is. 160 is the clerical numbers, so that's for the secretaries in that department. That 2810-400, home and hospital, that's the gen ed side of the equation. So again, I'm trying to track this so I can get data that I could watch data and trends, so we just split it apart. Then you have in the 2810 line, that is let me get there. Contractual, what's in there is for any travel, conferences, trainings, and memberships for our school counselors, any counseling presentations, the SAT, ACT, AP prep, the testing supplies, that's in the number. We also have the student assistance person is in this number, but there's a decrease in there because we are looking at reconfiguring how we're doing supports K-12. And we think that we were able to adjust some things so that we're just going to have the student assistants primarily focusing on our high school students, and then utilize Pelham Together to work in middle school, and then sort of reworking our elementary school counselor so that we could come up with a better plan to be responsive to the budget where we needed to tighten things up. So that's why that number went down a little bit, but the student assistance service contract is also in this line. Then you see the separate line for Pelham Middle School, and that number again is about their conference, training, travel, and any memberships. In the
And
last
the
line.
student assistance counselor it's kind of for substance abuse.
Yep, specifically, and that's a contract with
Student Assistance Services.
Student Assistance Services. And I think also another reason why we're reconfiguring it, from what I can tell, is there's been inconsistency of staffing from them, and we've had turnover, and we're trying to come up with a model where we're not so dependent on that and be a little bit more self-sufficient. There's still tremendous value to them. They're trained very specifically in a very specific way regarding substance use. But we also have, again, additional resources that support us that we could think about Pelham Together, again, in our new contract with them, where we've just sort of tried to reconfigure things. And the last two lines in the counseling is materials and supplies for both offices in the middle school and high school. So that means still any paper mailings or anything that they need to send out in that manner. Then when we move to C21, this is the nursing budget. So this is our nursing line. So that first line is salaries. We do have one nurse in every building. We do have the 7th nurse position, which is going to go away. That was funded by COVID. We had that through a grant, I believe. And that isn't something that we're continuing. Pros and cons to that. I'm a little sad about it, but, we have to make some decisions. We do have a stipend for someone who will still be the coordinator. We have a coordinator this year, and she does a terrific job. What's just going to happen with us is when our nurses need to be out, we're going to go back to relying on agencies. And that's always tough because it's hard to, there's more demand than supply. Then equipment, again, this is just watching any equipment we need to maintain in those offices. Sometimes the audiometers need to be replaced, so they're very old. Maybe we want to try to get into a cycle where we're refreshing certain items in the nurse's office every year, the supplies they need when they do the vision screenings. The medical services line, that is our contract with our district physician, Dr. Legue. So we just went out to RFP last year and signed an RFP with him. So we didn't anticipate a lot of increases, but then again, that's also our nurse sublines. And we'll have to watch how that goes, depending on, when we need support. There are times, for example, too, like 5th grade field day coming up in the spring, and if we have diabetics going, we need another nurse to be available on the field. I don't have that 7th nurse now, so I can't pull a nurse from a building. We'll have to get a contract nurse to come and be available for, someone like our diabetics. So we have to make sure we cover that. Health service, other districts, Jim, I always lean on you to explain what that cost is and why we have it.
That's a bill that we're given every year. If we have Pelham students attending schools out of district and they receive health-related services, so let's just say we've got students at Holy Child, the city of Rye provides a nurse to that school. And the cost of that nurse is then divided on a pro rata basis, dependent upon the residents of the town that make up all the population of Holy Child. So if we were 10% of the population of Holy Child, we'd incur 10% of that cost for health services. So we get these bills from our different districts, and when the school used to be run out of OLPH, and that was our nurse, we would send bills out to those other districts for health services at those points in time. So it's a state law.
And then as you go down, the next lines are the budgets for the individual nurses in their buildings. So when they put in their ed data supplies for their offices, Band-Aids, ice packs, the things that they need to order. And you look, obviously the high school is it's got the most students. And then each school building, Hutchinson and Prospect, we build in a little more, again, a little more enrollment in those buildings. And these numbers generally have been solid, and the nurses do a great job ordering what they need and, and do well with that. So that brings us to the end. And then on C22, we have the psychologist salaries. That's in the 28-21-50. There is a contractual stipend as well for some summer work for the psychologists. As we get through the IEP seasons we are required by law to make sure we have an IEP in the hand of every family of a classified student by the start of school. But as we, try to keep up, sometimes we need some additional time to write. So contractually, I believe there's time built into the contract for that, for the psychologists. The 2850 is the social work salaries, so that's Leela Zahed in the high school and Angela Snyder in the middle school. And then that last line, 2825 400, the contractual, that's Sharon Charles, that's the part-time social worker we have in the middle school. So that is the end of that. So that's the end of PPS. Just for me, just to say in closing, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Lauren and Greg, who helped me get through this process. It's not easy to plan and pull numbers and get projections. I don't know how they do it. Greg is like this master at these crazy spreadsheets, and how he gets these numbers down is incredible. So I'm so thankful that I have them. But I also want to say that, this is hard, and I know the numbers are the numbers, but I'm so incredibly proud of the programs that we have in special education in this district. They're incredible. The staff is incredible. Our kids are well taken care of and supported. I know sometimes parents don't feel happy all the time when there are times that we have to say no to certain things, but we really do a good job of making ethical decisions and decisions based on data when we get to the table and we have to make determinations. And I'm just incredibly proud of the staff and incredibly proud of the programming, and the amount that it's so evident how much they care. All our teachers care, but sometimes some of the students that are in this world, they're challenging and they're hard, and but we love them and we take care of them, and it's gives me a great sense of pride and joy to be a part of that. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very thorough.
Thank you.
And if you could say it, we actually went into detail in the finance committee, so.
Yes, this was the summary version.
This was the summary. This was the short version.
Right, and if any of the members want to add to that later on too, I mean, and I think we were pretty exhaustive, but that was intentional because there's a lot going on, and it was important to share all that information.
Yeah, and I do want to thank Tracy and Lauren and Greg too. Just, it really is, it takes so much wisdom and foresight and a lot of good guessing to really come up with a budget, but every year you guys do it. And it always is at the center of all of it, and I think you make that very clear, is the students' needs. These are our kids. So whatever they need is what we're going to do. And we're going to try to do it smart, and we're going to do it efficiently, but we're going to give them what they need. So thanks for all of your hard work on that, all three of you.
All right. So next up in his rookie performance,
Lauren and Greg, Lauren and Greg, feel free if you want to.
he's been in the bullpen, our athletic director, Joe Toombs,
All right.
with I won't tell how many slides you have, Joe. I'll leave that up to you.
We'll move through them quickly.
There we go.
And not all of our departments have done presentations, but given the breadth of the athletics program in particular, in addition to the curricular, Joe and I talked and felt like it would be appropriate for him
Yes.
to give us a little visual tonight.
A little first-year hazing, too.
We don't say that. Nope.
But we have a
well,
hazing
it's-
policy.
Oh, I know. Did I say
Thank you,
hazing?
Dr. Owen Machine.
Earning my stripes then,
Initiation.
perhaps. But good evening, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. I'll be walking us through the athletic budget, and I'm going to start with kind of giving an overview a little bit of the department so you understand what really drives the budget, because it might not be as commonly known or clearly known as maybe some more, down the fairway instructional area. So, but without further ado, I'll dive into it. So we'll go through a quick profile, some quick projects that have been going on, maybe behind the scenes, and then the actual line by line. So this is the org chart in my department. I have to give my administrative assistant, Tony Damiano, a major shout out. It would not work without her. She is the best in the business. I have reporting kind of on the phys ed side of stuff is a .1 phys ed coordinator who takes care of a lot of our phys ed scheduling. And I say that because a lot of this presentation tonight won't be about phys ed and health, even though they are my areas. A lot of their budget driving components are in other people's sections, like staffing, for instance, that will be addressed at another time. And the last three are the assistant directors. They're seasonally appointed here at Pelham. One for the fall, one for the winter and the spring. So that is the team. I wanted to get into the offerings. I think this is really a bright spot of the Pelham School District. We offer a lot, and you'll see it's broken down into fall, winter, and spring, and then it's broken down into the levels of each offering. So that is an individual team with an individual coach, an individual schedule, just to give perspective. And there's 3 of these, because again, we offer a lot. You'll see some of the sports are, for instance, boys swim and dive is a 9 through 12. So that team would have freshmen all the way up to seniors on one varsity squad. That's allowed because it's based on times. And students fit into heats based on times, and they compete against individuals with similar ability. And on this slide, you'll see the grand totals. One of the things, as we look down at the horizon with our new fitness center is how we are going to staff that. I put it on the slide now. We're still kind of fleshing that out, how that's going to live. But we are looking to figure out how to staff and develop a strength and conditioning program for our new facility. Grand total being 76 programs. Next is our student interest. This is as determined by registration. So some of these numbers are students that play multiple sports, but I did this by registration just show, because every time a student registers, it's a new workload and a new budget driver, because it's a different sport, different season. So 7th through 8th grade, 359 students or registrations, and 9th through 12, 552. Really proud of that last column. Final Forms, our registration platform has a lot of, like a nice toolkit. 57% of our middle schoolers are multi-sport. So half of our students come and they come again. to play. So that's a credit to the programming and our coaching staffs. And at the high school, 56. So it's not much of a drop-off. Next is our staffing. I'd say about 100 coaches. This varies year to year depending on the offerings, depending year to year about student interest. It depends year to year on whether we split stipends. Some of our coaching staffs get very creative on how they staff their program. I think of sports like football with so many positions. We split stipends a couple times. So one coaching stipend is actually staffing or paying for 2 coaches. And it's a testament to the coaches that they're willing to do that work for less pay. Commitment to the program. Notable in this area is the 3 different pathways. This has been, any coach that comes in and coaches in front of our kids has to get certified. There are 3 pathways with New York State. To the left on the bottom bar there is the easiest pathway. Those are your phys ed teachers in New York State. Says, good, step on the field, get CPR, get first aid, and get out there and coach. The next tier is going to be your certified teachers. So this is somebody that has a New York State license with the state. They have to take a couple more steps to become more like a phys ed teacher in the eyes of New York State. And the last area, which is our growing area, our growing pot, are the non-teacher certified. So these are people who don't have licenses with New York State, but still want to work with our students after school. And there is a very lengthy multi-year process that they must go through. But that is, again, the staffing, with the asterisk that it does change from year to year. Another phenomenon we have a lot here at Pelham is unpaid assistants. So these are individuals that don't get any budgetary money, but they still have to be certified. So we still have to, New York State just says, just because you're not getting paid doesn't mean we're not going to make sure you're fingerprinted, make sure you're fully certified. So we make sure to go through that with those individuals. This slide here is just to, we don't turn the lights on and roll a ball out. It is a major undertaking every time we have a game, we host a game. We have announcers, scoreboard, shot clock, bookkeepers, and these are all individuals that are staffed through the athletic department. And we're projecting this year alone to process 119 timesheets. So that is like a pay voucher, for instance, and each timesheet could have 2 games on it, or it could have 20 individual cases where an individual worked. So this is, it's hard to put a number on it, but I'm going to say probably close to 1,000. Instructional staff, this is the phys ed and health teachers. And again, as I mentioned earlier, most of their stuff's predominantly done, their budget line, equipment lines through the building level. So I won't go much into depth there. These are the facilities where we run. These are instructional spaces where we run our events. We are like spores. We're just spread out all over the district. So every nook and cranny we can find a space where we'll be trying to run some practice or event. You'll even see in the cafeterias we run standing practices with our cheer squads. And also in the third column there, the training centers, the weight room, the fitness center, and the studio. Studio has an asterisk because it is still a work in progress, but it is coming, and we are excited. Some of the equipment has already started arriving. The floor has arrived already. So this is the number of events that we run. I can't figure out why it's so disproportionate home and away. Maybe we shouldn't share the slide with our neighboring districts, but we have 326 home events run a year. These are not practices, these are competitions where another team is coming to us to play. They're driving a bus to us. We have 204 away competitions. That means we're staffing 204 buses minimum. A lot of our teams travel on 2 buses because the rosters are so big. And that, again, runs through our office. And I will mention that in our transportation line later.
Joe, may I ask a quick question on that?
Yes.
Referees and umpires, who pays for those, the home team or the away team?
The home team does.
Okay.
Yep, the home
So
team does.
our neighbouring districts are sort of getting a
Deal.
I guess.
They could be looked at that way. I would, if I was thinking about this earlier when I saw the numbers, probably because we have turf, especially with baseball and softball. Because usually the team will rotate to us if we're getting a game with rain. So
It's probably more convenient for the students and parents to not have to travel and be on the bus
Yeah.
it's a big win.
For us, yeah.
and
It's a
And
big
reduce
one.
have
transportation.
time to do their homework and get to bed on time. And Good for learning.
Yes.
Home field advantage.
Quick little, some projects that we've been working on. One of the major lifts we found out pretty early when I arrived in July, the coaching certification process. It is a very complicated process with state ed. And we have a lot of teachers, excuse me, a lot of coaches now that aren't from the teacher certification pathway. So we've been working with HR. We have created a coaching guide that's shared with each coach. So when they start at Pelham, we have an onboarding packet. They fill it out, they submit it to Patricia Madden. That starts getting processed. And then we have a guide to kind of walk the coaches through what it would otherwise be a very complicated path. And we made it as kind of checklist as possible. So it'll show when they get their first aid, when it expires, when they take DASA, doesn't expire, just walks them through the whole process there. This process has gotten a lot easier, I tell our coaches, because most of it's online. Where 10 years ago, you had to drive to a school and sit there and take. There's also an easier pathway through NFHS, our national governing body, where you don't have to take the college courses anymore, like the three credit courses. So the path has gotten easier, but still it is tricky to follow. So this has been really helpful, and the coaches are thankful, not really thankful for the work, but thankful for the guidance. Another major project has very large budget implications you'll see later, is really getting a hold of our uniform inventories. I want to thank the board for earlier this year releasing hundreds and hundreds of old, outdated uniforms that are probably some of them going back to the 90s. Holes in them, they serve no purpose. They were taking up spaces. Some of them were still getting in the reconditioning line and going out and being paid for. So now those are gone. We'll never have to worry about those again, and that line has gotten really tight. This is an office. This is a locker room, picture of a locker room where we were kind of bringing back all the district uniforms back to a central location. And we are creating a sign-out process and an inventory, so each coach knows what they'll be signing out as far as the number of tops, the numbers of bottoms, and what's expected that gets returned at the end of the season. All right, this has been quite a heavy lift this year, and we got to like maybe a couple weeks ago we could actually see it all. Every single program's uniforms, what was needed to stay and what needed to go. So this has been a wonderful project, and again, it's really leaned out that particular reconditioning budget line. Another big project from this year is our athletic placement process. This is something we have to get right here at Pelham. This is a tool that allows students to play in grades, areas of competition, grades of competition above their chronological grade age. So if a 7th grader playing on JV, an 8th grader playing on varsity. It is maybe it's a complicated process, 38-page document that students have to go through step by step by step. I feel now that the district has a very transparent and step-by-step process. It's all posted on the website, so families can feel more confident about how they navigate through the APP. Right? Some of the things with the APP, there are a lot of caveats in it to make sure that it stays instructional and that it stays safe. One of those caveats is we can't backfill rosters like a JV or a varsity roster with a 7th and 8th grader just because we don't have enough student interest. You'll find that in bold in the mandate in several locations. So it's something a lot of communities always ask. So I just wanted to be clear on that. So this is something that I'm really working with the coaches to get us aligned on, and it's been a heavy lift, but I think it's going to be really valuable. And again, getting it on the website and being transparent is going to help really tighten up the process.
And Joe, just a quick question on that. Who is eligible for the APP and how are they identified?
It's a great question. So the APP technically is a tool used to move students up to play. So a 7th grader playing up, and it's also a tool, believe it or not, to move students down. So if you have a 12th grader that's more developmentally appropriate that they play a lower level, we can use the APP tool for that as well. But the first step, and an important step, is the coach has to fill out Form D, which is the coaching skill eval, which means the coach believes the student has the right skills and knowledge of a sport to play at a much higher level, that they can be there safely and play.
And that would be for an exceptional athlete as opposed to just the current best.
Correct. Yeah, the state is clear on that too.
In the
They
group.
mentioned it several times. This is for the exceptionally gifted. I've been telling families, think of when this was originally written up, the 6'4" seventh grader that was dunking a basketball. That was the original intent. And almost to the point where it'd probably be unsafe to keep a 6'4" that's dunking a basketball on a seventh grade court. So, it's evolving, right? It's evolving in a lot of communities, but it's on the line, it's online, it's posted, it's clear, and it's something that we been working hard. I'm pretty proud of the progress we've made on it this year. Another project here that we've been working on, bringing this back to life. New York State Public High School Athletic Association is one of our governing bodies that we report to, and they tell us the rules. But one of the nice things that they do is Scholar Athlete Award. So the way it works with them, for recognition, your team, 75% of your team roster has to have a 90% GPA or higher. We're now submitting this to New York State, and I can't believe our GPA is in this district. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely incredible, and I won't say which two, but with the exception of a few, every team has made this designation, and it's not an easy one. And then there's end of the year honors at the state level. There's pins that the students get for, back in the day when varsity jackets were a thing. But we have the pins in the office, and we'll be acknowledging these teams later this year at the booster dinner.
Is that JV and varsity?
Only varsity.
Only varsity.
I think this is the final project I'm mentioning. The fitness center. This has been a wonderful partnership with some of our community-based organizations. This is the unpacking the other day. Yeah, it's not the best picture, but I don't want to take any steam from Friends of Pelham. I don't know their rollout plan, so we have bubble-wrapped teaser picture here. But the room is being used currently, and we pulled it off during the school year. It's been incredible to see. So our students are already in there during the school day, and we just had our first team go in after school. So this is already getting return on investment. Now, and the Pelham Education Foundation as well for getting involved too. I have to make a note there. Okay, so now the line by line, we'll start on page C27.
Joe, before you dive into that, can I just highlight a couple things too? And sorry, if you're planning to mention this later, let me know and you can hold on answering. I'm thinking back a few slides. So you talked about the number of teams and number of programs that we run, and then you had a slide about facilities.
Okay.
So I'm coming from a very different district and coming to Pelham, what has been your experience with field usage, facilities usage, given the size of our programs?
It's a good point to mention, and thank you. I believe earlier this year, as part of the 5-year plan review, I was asked to submit a growth over since 2013. We've added over 30% programming into the same spaces. So it's like we're very busy in our spaces, and we don't have, we're kind of landlocked here at Pelham, as I think we all know. So what that ends up doing is we have a lot of spaces that are getting a lot of traffic. And you think of like the Ingalls and the dirt patches that are on Ingalls, and think of the lights being on all the time at Glover, because when you don't have a lot of spaces, you have to stack. And we go later into the night as a result. And that pushes rec later into the night, but we are providing a lot on not a lot.
And I know you also mentioned too the, excuse me, that a lot of, when there's like rain events or different things like that, games can get shifted, things get shifted here. I know some of our conversations have been a lot about the way that scheduling has changed over several years, whether it's becoming more electronic, more electronic systems involved, more responsibilities coming from BOCES down to districts to manage that, referee shortage. There's a whole lot that goes into athletics now that is very different than 5 years ago. So can you talk just a little bit about, what's kind of a typical,
Of course.
What's a typical day like for running games and schedule changes and such in your office?
So we can see by the number of events we offer, there are more events being offered than there are days a year. So we are very often multiple competitions going on at once. When I first, 20 years ago got into the career, you would get your schedule, and then you would make sure there was no funerals and there was no weddings, and that was your schedule. And you just worked that schedule. You never went to your AD to change it. It's evolved now where I would say probably 1 in 5 games is being changed, if not more. I was looking through some of the schedules earlier today, and there were some of our teams this spring, 50% of their games are getting moved. Okay, so what does that mean? We're moving the officials around, we're moving the buses around, getting all the communications out. We have to now put everything on software, right? Everything has to go on software. It's a large process just to move one game. So, you'd be well served never to bother an athletic director on a rain day. Because if we have 4 games on a rain day, it's like the clam game. The whole office shuts down just to get these games moved around. And then by the time you speak to the coach when they're available, and then speak to the opponent district to see when they're available, that could stretch out into several days. Right? So I'll get back to you with what my coach says. Okay, I'll get back to you with what my coach says. And the process has a lot of steps in it and also plays out over a long period of time. And then also now, because of the software, we have to upload all of those changes onto our school today. So families can follow along, the officials know where to go, the teams know where to go, the opponents know where to travel to.
And that doesn't even talk about the external communication then from the coach to the families and all those adjustments. That's all above and beyond that, correct?
Correct, and so what districts have started to do is they have put scheduling as a task for like an assistant AD, or they've hired a scheduler. So it's like anything else. If you have it, you have to use it. So everyone is rescheduling now. Things in the industry we never would have rescheduled for 10 years ago, we're rescheduling for on a regular basis. And I don't know, it kind of comes in swells. Like in the beginning of the season, we might be doing 20 reschedules a day, i.e. yesterday. In the middle of the season, maybe it's not been raining and we don't do as many. But we're rescheduling very frequently, where we weren't doing that a long time ago. Now we have more offerings and more rescheduling. It's a large time consumption for the office. So I hope that answered the.
Yes, it did. And I know you didn't want to, I wanted the board to be aware of those dynamics. And I know you manage it and you just kind of stay off the radar and handle it and do a great job at it. But I do think it's important for the board to know that much growth, in the last few years, and with that much growth in program, growth in work, yet with the same facilities and same staff and structure in the office. It's just something to be aware of as we continue strategic planning, thinking about this budget and thinking about future budgets. Just important to be aware of those needs. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. And I'll say this, people in the educational realm, we make master schedules for buildings, and the athletics is like making a master schedule daily. And it's like a riddle every day. And it kind of get political too, right? It can get political who gets what space, and so it is something that really has to be done right, because if you don't get the schedule right, nothing else, the bus doesn't go to the right spot, the coach doesn't show up at the right spot, et cetera. Okay. So I'll start going through on page C27. My lines are 2855, and the first one is line 132. This was one of the projects from this year. This is the supervision of games. And this was a new matrix that we made over the summer after talking to a bunch of stakeholders in the district and comparing ourselves to our neighboring districts. We're anticipating a small growth year over year with this one. But it's nice to see because the games are properly supervised and there's somebody greeting teams as they come in and working crowd control, et cetera. So, hopefully all leading to less incidences at games. Our next line is 150. These are the actual coaching stipends by season. So the first one is fall. Then we have the winter stipends and the spring. What I'll point out in this is, like, why do we see the variances and why are some seasons jumping more than others? This is all based on a stipend matrix that exists, and it's based on steps.
And just for the board and for those watching, that detail's on the next page following page C27, page C28.
Yep, and then on those pages, if you look at the second column, that is the step that coach is on, basically how long the coach has been working for the district. All right, and we maxed out at 11 years. So if you see anything in there that doesn't make sense, always go to that second column just to see how long that coach has been in role. All right, and then you'll also see some of the sports, the split stipend phenomena is in there. So you'll see an assistant coach getting paid less than another team's assistant coach. That could be because of the matrix, what their actual compensation is, or that could be because they're splitting a stipend, which we do a bit here at Pelham. Jim, anything else on those?
No, I think, again, these are driven by collective bargaining agreement, by agreements, the rates for the coaches, so.
And I would say, and I know that for many years, the union as well as athletic directors have worked to make sure that there was equity, gender equity across the team. So where there are comparable teams, the structure of that salary scale was very thoughtfully constructed. And as Joe said, any variation to that is likely due to years' experience, years in the district. It works very similar to the teacher's pay salary, where years equate to different levels of raises.
Yeah, actually on C29, under basketball, you'll see that with the head basketball coach for the boys and the girls. Their compensation's the
Yeah,
same based
Perfect
on,
example, thank you.
based on years of
For
service.
example. All right, moving down on C27, I'll be going to my 200 lines. This line, we just didn't feel there was a large equipment needs coming down the pipe for 24, 25, so you'll see a 100% reduction in that line. Some of the things that we forecast coming that might be athletic related, those are going to kind of overlap with facilities, and I know facilities and the business department will look at those. So you don't see them in mind, but they are being considered. Moving into the
All right,
400
Joe,
area.
sorry. So equipment is not uniforms, right?
Equipment is not.
Okay.
Yep, I have two lines Al can go over with us to talk about the uniforms. The next line is our 400 lines. Let me just get my cheat sheet out because. Okay. So the 411 lines, these are our facility rentals, for instance, like our Sarah Lawrence pool, the Turtle Cove driving range, where our teams had to go off-site and rent space. These are also our dues, again, because our department works so tightly with governing bodies that we owe dues to. One new cost in this one you'll see in the 411 line is we are reviewing, currently we have the concussion policy opened up and we're reviewing it. There is an option and there is a consideration for bringing in a baseline concussion software that assesses the students prior to the season. I don't know if this is the direction we're going to go in, but I wanted to build in a budget line there just in case we decide for health and safety or we decide the concussion policy should have something like that. We have that option of actually purchasing it. We might know the impact has been around forever. So if we know people in other districts, they may or may not have it. There really is no direct mandate to have it, but it wanted to put it in there. All right, line 413. We do a lot with this line. This is how we recondition our equipment. This is how our helmets go out and get recertified. Shoulder pads go out, get recertified to make sure that they come back with the right NOC certification. There are not many companies that do this for probably obvious reasons because of head and neck injuries. So we go out to bid with this one. There is a state contract with this one with Rydell. But it's football, hockey, boys lacrosse, for instance, baseball, softball helmets. Also in this one, we can do uniform purchasing. So this line, if we have fill-in uniforms, items that, the uniforms came back and some were ruined and we had to replace them with new ones, we can use this 413 line for that. The last one is 414. The number one area to look at in this is our entrance fees. This is how we pay for all of the wonderful experiences our students to go to tournaments, to go to elite track meets, et cetera. It comes from this line right here. So when we put in the trophy case a volleyball championship, tournament championship that happened over a weekend or a holiday, that's how we got the team into the tournament, through that line right there. And this is also, again, where our dues are. We do pay our coaching association dues on behalf of our coaches. I think that is a wonderful policy, because if we expect our coaches to be aligned to their association, I think paying $50 makes sense, or some small fee. They're usually very reasonable. Also on this line is Ruth, our trainer, with our symmetry physical therapy budget line. Ruth has been an institution here, so that's probably some very well spent money in that particular line, making sure all our students are out there playing safely. All right, moving to the 450 line. 450 line is supplies and materials. You'll see a 0% increase year over year. We've done a lot of work with getting in all the little closets. This is a pre-war building. There are so many little alcoves, nooks and crannies where balls have been stored or sticks have been stored. I've really enjoyed learning the infrastructure of our school district that way. But we've pulled back thousands of items. I'm thinking of girls lacrosse balls, the yellow balls. We found over 1,000 of these balls. Didn't have to order them. And that's great post-COVID pricing. Wow. So bringing everything back to the roost and putting systems in place and how we sign things off. And we're reinforcing the 450 line with planning meetings and exit meetings. Exit meetings, there's probably some coaches rolling their eyes as they hear this. I need to get to some of them. But we do planning meetings to do a needs assessment of what is actually needed. And one of the first questions I ask is, well, what do you have? And that's how we've been really able to tighten this line up and have no increase year over year. So with that being said, that concludes my lines. Any questions? Oh, my apologies. Transportation budget is the last one. This one's a tough one to forecast, and maybe Jim can help me a little bit on this, but we're really at the whim of who bids the athletics. We don't have our own internal busing, so we kind of get, I'm trying to think of the right word, what's left over from some of the larger providers for the athletic routes.
D1 in the.
Yes, if
Yeah,
you looked
third
on
tab.
page D1, it's the third item down, 5510.415. And kind of what Joe said, we've got a vendor that we've put out a bid for. One of the challenges of being a non-busing district is that many districts do provide the athletic busing with their capacity in their districts where they do provide that in-district busing. Since we don't have that, we really have to rely on any excess capacity that's falling off at those other districts. So they may finish a bus run at some locations, and then they have to come and provide transportation for us. All driver shortage isn't helping with that either, because they may have to do double loops at their own districts before they can be released to do transportation for us. I don't want to say I'm hearing less about it. Maybe we've all just gotten used to it, unfortunately. And I think it's something that we've all been dealing with. I don't think everybody's really thrilled about it. The service isn't where we want it to be, and the pricing seems to go up. And we've bid this, I think in my time here, I've probably bid this 4 to 6 times, looking for better pricing. So, and I know Joe's group does a very good job working with the bus company, planning trips, and then keeping track of it. When you have that cancellation, you may still get billed for it. They catch it, so we're not paying for those trips. So there's a lot of diligence in managing that aspect of the business.
And I think as much as we can control, we're doing a really good job with it at Pelham. These are global issues, the things in the transportation realm. So, but thank you for your time, and any questions,
Thank you.
please?
Thank you. Yeah.
One quick, sorry. Oh, you have a question? No, go ahead. I was just wondering if, in terms of adding new, and we talked about, we've already added a lot, but adding a new sport, a new program, like what's your thought process with that, or what you've seen in other districts? How do you, rather than just saying, let's add this, is there a process that you go through to evaluate that?
Yeah, it's a good question. We, as the new AD often, I've been getting asked a lot what we can add. I even had a student stop in today for boys volleyball. I've been asked for, how can we add more modified offerings? How can we add flag football? I know that's on everyone's radar. How can we add boys volleyball? These are programs that are getting very popular around New York State. I'm really enjoying my connection with student activities here at Pelham. I think they're a wonderful group. I think we have to really accurately capture student interest. I think a good way of doing that is some type of club or program with student activities, just to put the feelers out there and see what is the student interest. After that, we kind of have to see what is the requirement, like do a cost analysis. So if we have like a year or two of growth, or we have a particular cohort coming through, what is the cost analysis on this to see if it's even, financially possible? I think, for instance, that we just ran one of those on flag football. And then we have to holistically review it. And an example being, what are the implications if we do bring in a new sport? How does it play well with the other sports? I think some districts, flag football is like the belle of the ball right now. 200 schools in the state have brought it on. Your ADs are a mixed lot. It drew a certain kid out of the hallways that wasn't playing another sport, didn't impact us negatively in any way. Other ADs are saying it totally cannibalized another sport, and we lost an offering somewhere else. So I just think if we have to look at it comprehensively, and then what is the value if we have just this swell, like in a particular grade coming through, because that happens, like they're just for whatever reason. If we bring on a new sport, and that was it, it was just a bleep, and we spend all that money and we cannibalize another sport, and then that group graduates out and there's nothing there anymore. And also, it always comes down to talent. We coach talent, so do we have the right person to pull it off? And we have really good coaches here, so I imagine we'd be fine on a new offering.
So those are the kind of questions that I think then, you're thinking through as ideas come through to you.
Right.
And I think, there's another thing that, and I know Joe is alluded to a lot of different unique challenges that we have. So I think, on top of those, you'd have to think about your field space.
Oh, correct.
Scheduling, et cetera. Not that these are insurmountable problems, but I think that would, a thoughtful analysis of all those different potential factors and potential issues to determine if it is a viable program is, I think, a good conversation to have.
And whether we can actually execute on our end.
Right.
Right, with the facilities and,
Right.
and the staffing, et cetera.
Right.
Thank you.
So my question was very similar, but given that this is now your first year, from a budgetary standpoint, what would you say if you had a little bit more budget you would do in terms of the athletics?
Do I have to vet this with the assistant superintendent level in any way?
Yes.
Yes. I would obviously try to bring more students, gain more student interest in our athletic programming. I'm really interested in PD opportunities,
Okay.
getting our staff to go out and get, and this has great return, and, a coaching clinic, for instance, go get the best practices in the industry, bring those back here to Pelham. So PD would be probably the first thing I said. And after that, just how do we get student interest, and what are the implications for increased student, interest? 'Cause I'm sure that'll drive budget, and I'll stop there.
I will, one other thing I will add is, and I know, and again, I think many of you who I know were contributors to the Friends of Pelham Sports Project. We need to be thinking, and Joe touched on it a little bit, the long-term operating costs of now having this fitness room that we want to expand as a great opportunity for our students, not just our athletes, but all students. So, there's some operating costs that come with supervision. A strength and training coach is another thing that Joe's talking about. So those are some areas that kind of, with these wonderful gifts and opportunities, come additional costs that we need to be thinking about too. So I would add that as an answer to your question.
Right.
And I am too, as well as concerned about sustainability of oversight of the program too. So I think we could say that about a lot of our programs. I will add that. Having heard the PPS, conversation earlier and the growth in needs and demands, I think, there's a sustainability issue that everyone's doing a phenomenal job, but I think that's on a lot of our minds, is how do we continue to sustain oversight and provision of these programs for our families and students. Seems to be a common theme to me tonight. Yeah.
And then quickly, just to end on a high note, if you compare us to where you came from, what do you think we do particularly well here? What have you been pleasantly surprised by?
So I won't necessarily make it a comparison, but I think the connections, our staff's connections to students, I think is the best I've seen. It's almost like casual at some points. They know the students, and this might be because it's my first smaller system, even though we're not a small district. I just think our staff has gotten very good at connecting with kids and almost becoming family.
Very good, thanks.
Great answer.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, he's got one in the can, his first one.
Thank you guys for being with us tonight. All right. One more section to go.
Everyone's favorite HR person. So if everyone would turn to page A35. I mean, this is really the sheet, which even when I went over it with Jackie, I understand, which is really incredible. Staffing changes. So when the board started asking earlier on in the year, right in the fall, about some work sessions about the budget, right? I think there are pretty clear messaging and charges. It's in the staffing tab.
Yeah.
That talked about sustainability and growth, what's needed, what's wanted. I think the board's going to go through a fascinating exercise over the next few weeks and months about the strategic plan, right? Because I think about my time here from 2013 on, and you saw strategic plans taking community input and then factoring that building of program through the budget. So you saw that growth. I think right before COVID, there was, I think, a little bit of a change in the economy that shifted. I think we had to reassess some positions that we had. And then COVID hit. And then with COVID came what was unexpected with its funds, and then even the state funds, which was also money that was owed to us from years ago to the taxpayers and to the school district. So it's just fascinating to kind of see that change in that machination. But this year, we have a number. We know that there's always an increase in benefits. There's always an increase in salary. But then you have the number of people that work here, and you still have to get to a number. You still have to build a budget within a tax cap compliant budget. Not every district does that. Some districts want overrides. This district does not, and I'm thankful. Because I think that there's an expectation that maybe you hit that button when there's such a great need. So I think that if you look at the staffing overview, we had to find ways to get to the right number and without impacting student learning experiences, without taking away from students, without taking away from the program. And I think that really that was the charge that we heard, and I know that Dr. Champ met with the leadership team, looked at enrollment, class sizes, overages, things that don't need to be funded anymore, things to kind of move away from, to even make room for what Ms. Holtz was talking about, increases in teaching assistant, ICT class. So we have to find that balance. And I think that as Dr. Champ presents her budget, this does that. So if you just want to go over this is really the big page that talks about some ins and outs and fluctuations with staff. So at the elementary level, you know that we had 2 positions that we had in contingency that we added because it was for enrollment increases this year. And that is still in place within our budget for next year. So that's 65 sections that we have at the elementary level. And we predict that we're going to maintain that next year as well. The next line talks about the elementary interventions line, and there is recommendation to reduce that by 1. And I'm going to ask Dr. Bowman to discuss some of the information that we have, which leads us to that recommendation.
Yeah, so, am I good? Okay. Currently, we have 9 positions in the elementary level, and the budget supports 8. Just simply, when you have 9, you can cover more than you can when you have 8, right? Like, that's just simple. However, I've gone through the data throughout the course of the year with our screenings and looked at the numbers distributed across grade levels, across schools, and I am confident that we can maintain the integrity of our instructional program with 8 and a little bit of effective scheduling changes that might make it so that we're more responsively altering where interventionists are plugging in and pulling kids to get them back to where they need to go. One thing that's really wonderful is that as the year goes on, fewer and fewer kids require intervention, so there's more flexibility as the year goes on. That does complicate things when you're trying to make a staffing decision that's supposed to last throughout the course of the year. So one of the things that's built into the budget, I know, is 2 contingency positions, which if, the data reveals at the end of the year that we need to take a position out of contingency and use it to create another intervention space, then we can do that. But based upon the data that we have now with the kids who are currently serving in our elementary buildings, we will be fine.
So if you look at the next line, that's the first position, the elementary special education position, the new ICT class that Ms. Holzer was talking about earlier. That's an addition. To support, if you move down a little bit, there's also, just down further, it says teaching assistant special education, new ICT class. That's also an addition that Ms. Holzer was talking about. In physical education, we do have a retirement, and looking at scheduling and looking at the current program and how it's being served and whether we could be covered internally with current staff, we're recommending that we don't replace that position, which will also save us. We spent a lot of time looking at all the enrollments for next year for the different classes at the secondary level, and many of those are considered overages, right? You have a teacher that's 1.0 FTE, and maybe we need another section, so we pay someone an overage to teach a 0.1 or 0.2 to cover it, and we see a reduction of 0.73, which, some people may say that's not a lot. What does that mean? Well, for us, it does mean. It does give the teachers even more flexibility, right? They're not beholden to teaching 6 classes a day. It's really 5. So we just spent a lot of time, really, Dr. Champ is the leader of looking at that with our secondary team to see where we can really sharpen the pencils. I think a lot of work has been done there, which is good for our budget needs. So you see the overall change there, instructional changes is with the additions of the special education pieces, a reduction of 0.73 FTE. Non-instructionally, last year's budget, there was an increase to office staff to support the directors, the humanities director and also the math and science director. In my era also, there was an increase 0.5 to support the work and the shift that's happened in my office. Those positions have been very hard to find, right? And we know that there's a lot of overlap at times that happens in our offices. and we're thinking, being more creative, maybe we should combine those positions. It would help my side of the world also find a full-time person. That would also be shared with Dr. Callahan and Dr. Thompson, and we thought creatively that may be a better approach for us, even fiscally. So we're happy that we actually started looking for that position, and we think that that reduction will help us, I think, in that vein. So if you look further down, I know Ms. Olson's talking about the grants and the changes, especially with the school nurse, the coordinator, which we're no longer going to have, and that's a decrease from the grants. And in total, that is a decrease in staffing of 2.23. And again, I'm sure Dr. Shamp can speak about that a little further. We can say that confidently that really won't impact program. And you know, we listened very carefully and very seriously to the board's thoughts about the budget. And we recognize that there has been certain parts of growth, and we know with the new strategic plan, there'll be also some other decisions which are made in the future. So we have to be sustainable, we have to be smart about how we staff and how we spend the money. The other pages, in essence, it's supporting the
Did you have
same
a question?
information.
I was just going
Yes.
to say, and there are two contingency positions
Yes.
in the budget.
It's in the budget.
In the case that we
In case we need another interventionist, in case we need another elementary section, in case all of a sudden there's something at the secondary level that we need.
Yeah, and just
So-
confirming the first line item,
Yes.
the elementary teacher, those were the, I'm sorry, those were the,
The
we,
contingent positions.
the contingency positions
From the past.
From last
The
year.
last year's, yes, from the previous
Yeah,
budget.
I think we had budgeted 65 and wound up running, I'm sorry, we budgeted 63 with 2 contingency positions. We're running 65 sections now.
Right.
So this budget is built on actuals, which is the 65 now plus 2 additionals.
And that's important, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to see the 1.0 or 2.0 contingency right here. It's also part of the contingency budget in the lines that Jim builds in the budget in case we need those support mechanisms in the future. And sometimes we don't use it. That's great as well.
Thank you.
Welcome. The other pages are, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but they are the support pieces to what I just discussed, right? The fluctuations of FTEs from secondary, elementary, and so forth. The reduction from the grants on page 836. It just specifically gets into different locations, secondary level, district-wide, or elementary. On page 837, again, different ways of looking at it, but specifically now looking at the secondary FTEs and the changes, and that was predominantly due to really the cleanup of the overages and also the change with the PE staff member who's retiring. On A38, specifically into the elementary levels, each grade level, the number of sections we have, the decrease in the interventionists, but then also we have the 2 increases, one at the TA level for special ed and at the ICT level, special education classroom teacher is there as well. So again, we were maintain the 65 sections as this year at the elementary level, which is very important, but also the 2 contingencies are sort of gives us the ability when we have that need to use those positions creatively.
Right.
If you move on to page A39, district-wide staff by location, and those are the positions from the superintendent, the assistants, all the way to the directors, the administrators, the supervisors, our staff developers. Remember, we have staff developer in technology, but also ELA, K-5, mathematics, K-5. Those are still very important positions, and we're happy to keep those in place. You'll notice here the change with the support staff for HR. It says support staff, the 0.5 used to be 1.0, and that, as I mentioned, the reduction at the curriculum instruction support staff, that will merge with the support staff person in my job, and that will just be 1.0 instead of 1.5, which is currently on the books. And at the bottom of the page, you see the final district-wide total, which is a slight reduction. And then again, the codes specifically about each position, the administrative positions, FTEs, the clerical positions, and the FTEs. Notice again the 0.5 reduction in the clerical, which I mentioned before. On page 41, going through the facilities, all the maintenance, operations, buildings and grounds people, also the instructional, the teachers, as we mentioned before, all the changes and fluctuations at those levels, and then the teaching assistants, technology building monitors, and nurses. And you see again, as I mentioned on the first page, the reduction in 1.23. Again, I think that the proposals are sustainable. I think, but I do know, and I think that we understand that, we thought maybe there would be a larger number of retirements this year. That will happen in the future, just by age, as we all get to that point. But everyone does. But that is when, we have to think a little bit more creatively. Okay, what does this mean for us in terms of where we are for the budget? What are we replacing? What does it look like? And then the sooner that we know this is happening, and that's more of a trigger from the contract with the teachers when they notify us, December, when we can start recruiting, because the competition that we may have, of course, with other places. But again, based on this district's history and this district's reputation, that's our greatest asset in attracting people working here. You will see a posting that's going to go out, most likely on Friday, which we do have a retirement in social studies. Remember Dave Moskowitz, right? He was here with us for a leave, but he will be officially leaving. So that's not like a new position, but we have to post for that position. There may be a leave replacement also in social studies, as we may know, and Tracy's positions as well, right? We're going to be posting for those. You may see some leave replacements for maternities. I remember I may have mentioned too soon, I didn't knock on wood when I said, well, there aren't too many maternity leaves this year. Well, lo and behold, we may be having a few. And you may see some of that as well. And it's really something which I think the administrators, I want to thank them, because they're the ones which really sharpen the pencils. And we had those tough meetings. And, sometimes the past few years, those meetings weren't so tough, because we did see some growth. And, but they, I think, did a wonderful job of trying to understand where we're at as a budget side and the climate, and then what we need and what we want, and how do we make sure we don't impact program. And I think that that's what Dr. Champ's budget does for us. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions? Okay. All right, thank you. Round of applause. Going to the field left out. Great. Well, again, thank you, and thanks, Jim. Jackie's with us tonight, too. They just continue to monitor all the ins and outs and the flows and the changes. And and it is an iterative process over the course of these months. And we look forward then to our final budget line-by-line review at our next meeting.
Yes.
Correct? And then we will have another meeting for, discussion, reflection, et cetera. And then I believe we adopt the budget on April 17th. So if there's any, and I know Jim had extended the offer before, any questions, always reach out. If you ever want to sit and go through things in detail with he or Jackie, they're always welcome. And I would say too, if there are thoughts you're having as you're hearing, the budget, if there's things you want us to be prioritizing differently, thinking about, please let us know those things along the way, because it is, we did really work hard to make sure to try to fit in the priorities in what was a somewhat tight budget. So if you are going to be, seeking to make some adjustments, the sooner we know about those things, the better, because there will be work to do around making those things happen. Jim, anything else to?
No, I think the state budget guideline is April 1st. Yep. I don't think we're going to see a budget on April 1st, so hopefully we'll have a little bit more guidance from the state before the board is asked to adopt the budget on the 17th, but that may be ambitious as well at the state, so we'll see where that lands. And We'll work with the best guidance we have at that time, and we'll make sure to share that with the board as we receive that information. And again, thank you, Dr. Garcia, for the work, and then with the Finance Committee, this past meeting, we spent a lot of time on staffing, sharing our methodology and our budgeting, and really kind of peeling everything back to show the committee members kind of how we build up our budget for our staff based on whatever the contractual agreement is, any other fringe, cost of fringe, whether it's a retirement system, FICA, Medicare, a benefit plan, net cost to the district. So we really try to be very specific in how we build up that budget, and we had an opportunity, again, in that smaller group, we were able to share those examples with the committee. So we had two pretty long meetings, but I think they were important, and hopefully they provided a lot of visibility for the committee, which is what my goal was, and our goal is in trying to do this.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, I think we are ready to go back to the rest of the agenda.
Yeah.
No public comments.
Yeah, the next item, I'd be happy to accept a motion to approve the minutes from February 12th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we can move on to superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it very brief tonight. There are lots of great things going on in the district, but I just wanted to share a little bit about our session earlier this afternoon, our strategic planning. It's exciting to have our consultants in. The board and the cabinet and I were here starting at 3:30, meeting with them and really kind of taking those first steps into the actual process now. Since folks, just to keep, be transparent and share with folks the update of our progress, we spent the afternoon today kind of going back through, getting a deeper understanding of the process itself and about what are the tasks that the board and the district will be asked to grapple with over about the equivalent of about 12 hours of really deep dive into the strategic planning process. And through that, we're going to be covering identifying the strategic goals and objectives of the plan to work towards board approval of a plan by the end of June, which then the administrators will work with teacher colleagues to flesh out the action items about how to make and the deliverables on how to make those strategic objectives happen. So we talked a lot about a process, which was great, just to develop a deeper understanding of what that would look like. We'll also be spending time developing updated vision and mission and identifying values that will be part of the strategic plan for our district for the next 5 years. As part of that conversation, what we did also do, we realized and I know folks, and I know I'm just repeating this for the board, but for the sake of the folks who are watching, we had worked back at the end of back in February to identify a timeline for our process. And we've completed our surveys, so thanks to everybody who completed the surveys. We hit and surpassed our goals in that. And focus groups, thanks to Monica and Karen, met with a great wealth of folks that came in and spent their time to give us their opinion, so thank you for that. The board has been given the data and the summaries of all of that, so we're going to start the deep dive into those data sources, the quantitative and the qualitative. The board and the cabinet also had individual interviews. That's another source of data that's incorporated. And Hazard Young and Atia also then did they call a data scan. So taking lots of relevant data about our district, from academic to financial to strategic plans, to the CCC recommendation, a variety of different pieces of data that they put together to give kind of a snapshot of our district. So those are the main data sources that we have been putting together and that they reviewed and the board now has. But what we talked about as we took a deeper dive into the process is, in order to have the right voices around the table for this next step, we realized that the schedule that we set up actually conflicts with a bunch of our district meetings, which would then prohibit the involvement from our administrators and our teachers who are critical voices in this next step. So what we did is we spent a little bit of time also looking at calendars. It's a very busy district, very busy board, but we found what we hope to be some different dates, different approach to trying to have this next phase. so that we can hopefully invite in administrators and teachers that represent all the different perspectives of the district to work side by side with us as we do take that deep data dive in and start to identify what are those key strategic priorities. We also talked about bringing the voice of students as well. So I will be reaching out to those different groups pretty quickly. I know break is almost here, so in the next couple of days and when we return from break to try to secure folks to join us on those days. But really excited to, I know how much the board values the voice of our educators and our students. So happy to have found a way to hopefully involve them in this next stage and really have them have a real deep understanding of the strategic goals. And I think out of that will flow a successful plan that will be really well matched to the district, to the vision of the board, and to moving the district forward. I think that's about it for me tonight. We've put in a long day already, so get to some business and
Great, thank you. Next, Board of Education Committee reports. You have any?
Finance.
Finance.
we already talked about that.
Talked about everything that they,
Okay.
we talked about.
I guess we could talk about the engagement. We had the World Cafe cell phone conversation yesterday, and a lot of the community members did show up.
Yeah, it was great. We had
we're-
about 40 people that came.
Right. We're very thankful for them to showing up. It was a lovely meeting. It was really very informative. And so we collected the data. We've passed on the data to Dr. Champ. We're still kind of analyzing that data since it just happened yesterday, and we
Yes.
were here today at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So more to come on that, but that was our latest meeting. I especially want to thank the committee members for coming in and kind of being the facilitators and taking notes. We really appreciated their input and the fact that they were, scribes for us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to say anything.
And I said, we also, the PTA from the high school also
Yes.
joined forces with us on that, so
Yeah.
appreciate their help and partnership too.
The one thing I would add on the finance side, and I guess there's an agenda item about this, but, sorry, is that better? Is the proposal that's going to be voted on, I guess, to provide for a vote to use the capital reserve related to the fields to do a replacement of the Glover turf. And that's given the approvals that'll be required for that, that's probably at least a year away from actually happening, but would need to get the process started. And so the first step of that is getting approval to use the reserve for that project.
There still needs to be voted. There's a subsequent vote, right, on it? Yeah.
That would be the idea, would be to put it on the agenda for the vote that's coming up, the budget vote, to include a separate line item for community approval of that. Jim, does that cover it?
That's exactly correct. As a capital reserve with the specific use, the voters need to approve of that use before any of that money can be spent. So the process would be for the board at this meeting to approve that as a ballot item. And then, assuming the board would approve it, then this would end up on the ballot during the annual budget election as a separate item. And then as a simple yes or no proposition, 50% plus one. And again, these are monies that are already in the bank, so there's no borrowing about this. It's using monies that are in this bank from an account that was set up in 2016, I believe, is
For
what the
this purpose.
For the purpose of fields and turf replacement. And I think that part of the success that Mr. Toombs spoke about has been helped quite a bit with having turf fields and a lot of uptime with the fields. So I think we brought it up at the Facilities Committee meeting a few weeks ago and with Finance. And the field is in good condition now, but it's also reaching that stage of the end of its useful life. We don't want to find the district in a position where we're behind a step. We want to make sure we get ahead of it and we replace it in a manner so that we don't have downtime for our students and for our community.
Thanks for thinking ahead.
And once that reserve is used, and that's it, right? There's no
Correct.
refunding.
That's right. So the reserve was set up, I forget the exact dollar amount, I think it was either 1.5 or $1.6 million. Once that amount has been deposited into that account, which was, you can no longer, you can't do something like top it off to 1.6 again. You can only draw that down. And then if the community wanted to have an account like this in the future, you would need a public vote to establish that account.
Jim, how long does it take for, I guess, the field to be turfed? Like, I'm assuming this is going to happen during a summer.
It could happen over the summer or a time period, say, after, you could do some of it probably after the fall season, and then they would finish up this time of the year to do the lines and the other things. I think ideally, we'd want it done over the summer time period, which is really when everybody wants to replace their turf fields. But doing it at this point in time, as was mentioned, is not going to replace, assuming approved. It's not like it would happen this upcoming summer. We'd have to get architectural plans, approval from State Education Department, order it, and assume it's delivered. So there's some timing issues around that too. So that's why we want to get ahead of it.
So if approved in May, it would be at least a year to a year and a half before the work would be completed.
I think that's a fair assumption. I think a year from summer 25 would be the earliest one could expect that.
And it has a useful life of about 10 years, you said, the turf, roughly?
Yeah, you'll see anywhere from 8 to 10 from the manufacturers, but from users, you can see 10 to 12, 12 to 15, depending on use, how much sun it gets, upkeep, maintenance. I think we do a very good job maintaining it. When we see a rip in the seams or something, we try to have that maintained. We have it groomed regularly. But there's a lot of use, and of course, the UV will do its job over time as well.
I guess there's plenty of time to figure out where the money comes from for the next time we need to do this.
The next one I'm worried about is the new turf.
Right.
Sorry, Friendship.
Yeah,
Friendship
and
actually was a
Friendship.
few
Oh,
years.
friendship.
Friendship
Just got
is the second oldest at that point, and that's 6 years old now, I
Yeah,
think.
that was done in our time here.
Yep, our
First or
first year.
second year. Okay. I'm going to suggest maybe for the reports, we just focus on highlights and expedite. Yep. Just the highlights. Yeah, and I know, and again, so again, the board does get reports from the cabinet, so they're well aware of the work that's going on in each of their key areas. So anything relevant for the agenda or, key highlight would be great.
So we are well underway with summer program planning for all the levels and all the programs across the district. We have postings out and are receiving interested applicants as well as students who are interested as well. The Literacy Committee met and has begun the work. There will be a few more meetings over the course of this year and extend to next year to just ensure that we are in alignment with the governor's Back to Basics initiative, and also make sure that we're very much in the form of best practices and making sure moving forward. There were learning walks that happened on March 4th between the high school and the elementary schools with some of our math science teachers coming down and seeing what's going on. And, I put in my report some of the reflections that the teachers who visited had. And all in all, it was a very positive experience and a really great professional development opportunity for teachers at one level to see what happens at a different level, so they see how the kids progress over time and what goes on in a different classroom. Our district MTSS committee continues its work, and we are creating a document that I hope to bring to you this spring for review in the coming months. Our Authentic Learning Committee met on March 12th. And the highlight of that meeting was that Dr. Thompson brought us the textbooks for 2 new courses that are coming to the high school, as well as a replacement textbook for AP Euro. Mr. Sabalas spent last Thursday and Friday in Washington, D.C. as part of his EPLP program at a policy seminar, and he told me yesterday he wants to become a lobbyist. So, and I think he would be excellent at it. And last Friday was our superintendent's conference day, which was, I think, by all measures successful. Teachers very much enjoyed having the Teacher of the Year who gave our keynote speech, so I want to thank the PEF for funding that, and also Rebecca Peterson for being available and coming here. And it really did a great job of kicking off a day of professional learning for teachers K-12 in all sorts of different ways, with all sorts of different presenters from both external contractors coming in, people within our own system presenting from the administrative level. But also, I think it's important to highlight that we had teachers who stepped in, and we have a wealth of knowledge within the district, and some teachers stepped in to present sessions and provide professional learning to our teachers and staff throughout the district. So it was a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll be brief. So, I also wanted to say, we have our ICT consultant is coming in tomorrow. We're getting towards the end of those visits for those this year, so it was a great experience this year. We look forward to how we're going to plan for them for next year, especially because we're going to have a new ICT team. I also want to echo, during Superintendent Conference Day, we had a lot of exciting workshops that were available in the PPS world. We had psychology, we had, as I mentioned, the frontline consultant that worked with our special education staff on progress monitoring and data collection. We had a speaker come in to talk to us about 504 accommodation plans. So that was very exciting. Earl Hunter, our consultant, completed his last responsive classroom workshop. He had about 30 teachers that he worked on connecting morning meeting to academics, which is a phenomenal workshop that he did. It was super exciting. We had our consulting BCBA that had 4 filled workshop sessions about Tier 1 classroom interventions for all teachers. So that was exciting. We had people come in from the Department of Community Mental Health to talk to our support staff and our counselors about community-based resources. So there was a lot going on that day. So very busy, but very excited, and I think everyone thought it went well. Our Wellness Committee met yesterday. We were a little light. I had to switch days, had a conflict from last week, but we're coming to some closure on some of our subcommittees. We'll have our Narcan policy to move forward to the policy committee this year. I'm not sure how many more policy committee meetings left, but we did become a option 1 school, which means we can train our own staff. We could order our own Narcan, so we have to have policy related to that. So we'll have that finalized and ready to go to you. I just want to have legal to look at it first. Also, we had a subcommittee that worked on a grant around grief. That was a parent that came forward that mentioned to you, we applied for the grant and we got it. So that will allow for us some additional training at the secondary level, how to deal around the topic for grief. And if we get the rest of the grant, it's $500 for each elementary school, which we can use for supplies like books, how to talk to little kids about losing a pet or a sick grandparent. So really nice little extra add to have for our support staff to have in their arsenal of areas that they can address with students. So that was exciting. In the counseling department, our pre-ACT exam was offered last Saturday. AP exams are going to go on this year, March 6th through 17th. We've got a lot of AP exams going on. Tests this year will continue to be paper-based. But we ordered 1,075 AP exams that have been ordered this year, with almost 500 students that will be sitting for AP exams. So we've got students sitting for multiple exams, which is exciting. But what goes with that too is a lot of organization and challenging, because depending on student needs and accommodations, we have multiple administrations of the same exam. So for example, just for AP language, based on student testing accommodations, we're going to have 7 different test administrations. AP US is going to have 6. So a lot of organization, a lot that goes on with the counseling department, but all good. Then just one quick update in nursing. So COVID, you've seen this. Hopefully some of you heard it. March 1st, the CDC has changed their guideline. There's no more official isolation. So just today, I believe we launched on our website the new changes. So basically what that means, if you are sick, you don't have to isolate anymore for 5 days. As long as you feel better, within 24 hours, you can return if you're fever-free and not fever-reducing medication. There are some precautions that you need to do upon return, but no more official isolation language any longer. So hopefully that means the world is returning to whatever normal means these days. That's it for me.
Thank you, Tracy. That should have a significant impact on attendance for both students and staff, so it's a really welcome change.
I'll enjoy my time to my colleague, Mr. Chairman.
Outstanding decision, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. For the board, just a few items. There's a couple items on the agenda this evening, regular business office items. Our January treasurer's report, kind of coinciding with Tracy's presentation today, a recommendation for a contract with Devereaux, which is a school for a student placement. So these types of things that, again, part of the budget. There's a change order. It's I have to say, this is a change order that was stuck to a previous change order. So we were trying to close out the projects, and we found out this was a change order that was not, that did not run through the board. As far as missing a change order, this is a good one. It was under $50,000, so it has to just, it requires board notification. So it didn't require board authorization. Also, it's a $42,000 credit, so it's not like we're paying money. It was money that we got back from the vendor. Again, my apologies that it did not, that it got captured with the other one, but we want to make sure we capture everything with our closeout of the project. So that's there this evening. There's two items for SECRA that you'll see on this evening's agenda. SECRA, as I've shared with the board before, is a requirement for our capital projects. We're really working with two different capital projects right now. The first coincides with the Glover turf field replacement, and sequentially that needs to be approved prior to the board acting on the item for the proposition. So sequentially, that's why that's coming before the proposition on the agenda. The other item is a SECRA resolution related to a grant we're working through from former Senator Biaggi, which is for safety and security cameras and grants district-wide. So that's something, again, we heard about it, we didn't hear about it for a long time, then we heard about it, so we're working through this process. It's about a $1.3 million grant. And again, it's about more backbone for our systems, which is switches and technologies and servers, but in addition to that, a lot more visibility, cameras, internal cameras, and locking systems throughout the district. So that's the second item that we have there. PLC Day, it's not often the business office gets to participate in PLC Days, but we had one class for Narcan, which Altair's coordinated with the Department of Health. We had 59 participants in 2 different sessions. So, and now that we can do it, we don't have to bring in the Department of Health. But I think, again, it's just another item and a part of building district-wide capacity for safety. So I think that was successful for that. So happy to be a part of that. And finally, April 1st is the deadline for out-of-district transportation for those who have students that go to school outside of the Pelham schools and districts in schools outside of Pelham. We provide transportation up to 15 miles away. You have to make that application by April 1st. If you're thinking of sending your student out of district, it's important that you submit this application as well by April 1st. And we've made that communication with those that have already have transportation. We've posted it in the newspaper. We've sent notifications, but this is another notification. April 1st is the deadline. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Any questions about the Glover Field proposition? Okay. Do you think we need to vote separately on the SECRA and then vote on the?
I think we're okay because everything is sequential.
Okay.
I guess belt and suspenders, it probably doesn't hurt.
Okay.
I want to say I'm okay, but God forbid we miss the date and then it doesn't happen. So
Okay.
let's go to safety and say do each one separately.
Okay. All right. Okay, so then I guess I would propose a motion to do 8.1 through 8.
Maybe 8.7?
Good 8.9 probably.
Well, if you want to separate out the secrets, you've got to stop before it.
Yeah, just do that action.
8.7?
Yeah.
Okay.
8.7.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions? on
I just a
these?
couple other piece of information. Just wanted to point out on 8 thank you, 8.6. I mentioned this at our last meeting, but this is, again, the revision of this year's school calendar in light of having taken a second emergency weather day, snow day. The dates near Memorial Day have now shifted to, that's the wrong attachment, shifted to instructional days. So that means that now May 23rd and 24th of this year will be instructional days. And just for clarification, and we'll work on trying to adjust the language for next year, we did get a few questions about, I thought we had 5 snow days, why are we having to make up instructional days? The first 2 snow days are related to those contingency days, and that is part of a collective bargaining agreement. So we do have 5 days built into the calendar. If we use one, then one of those days becomes a regular day. If we use 2, then the second one becomes a regular school day. We still have 3 more snow days beyond that, so we can use those without any additional changes. It's if we go beyond that 5, then we start to have to take days back from spring break. So that's kind of the confusion in there. So we'll try to find a way to clarify that better. It's a lot of language for a very little amount of space. But that's, again, then that's, folks understood that once we explained it to them, but just for everyone's clarification purposes. So that is within there. And I would just point out that 8.7 is also the start of the many approvals that we're going to have related to the budget vote.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then I think we can do, accept a motion for item 8.8.
And 8.9.
I do them separate.
I'm separate.
You can,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and do I have a motion for 8.9?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
And maybe we do 8.10, the resolution to approve the proposition to expend money held in the capital reserve fund.
So moved.
Any comments or questions about that one?
I would just note that, for the sake of anyone listening, the amount that was in the proposition, an amount to expend an amount up to $850,000 from the capital reserve, known as the Pelham Schools District Athletic Field Capital Reserve Fund 2016, to replace the artificial turf. Just wanted to make sure the amount
proposition.
was noted publicly.
Okay, and that's less than the full balance? of
that's
that?
less than the full amount. The full amount has a little bit over $1.3 million in it right now, and it's gaining some nice interest. Also, the proposition and the enacting legislation was reviewed by our attorney, and what you see here is the product of her looking at that information and developing the proposition.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Okay, then I think we could do 8.11 through 8.16 as a consent agenda, if someone would like to make a motion.
So moved.
Any comments or questions about these? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then finally, I will accept a motion to approve item 8.17, to accept a donation.
So moved.
Okay, and I'll read this. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education does hereby accept the donation of $1,208 toward the Colonial School digital billboard, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Colonial Elementary School 5th grade class. Wow. Thank you, 5th graders, 2023. Be it further resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education does hereby accept a monetary donation of $305.27 for costs associated with the Siwanoy Elementary School Spelling Bee program, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Siwanoy Elementary School PTA. Be it further resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education does hereby accept the monetary donation of $14,984.80 for a grant for flex furniture for Foundations of Learning classroom, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. Always a very generous community. We're very grateful for that. All in favor? Aye. Then that brings us to, wow, we've still got to talk about policy.
We'll make it brief.
Okay, so we have policy 5720, transportation of students, first reading, which was discussed in the policy committee.
I'm happy to tackle
Sure.
this one. Yes, and you can see the edits that are proposed in blue. This is a policy that seems to come back to us time and time again, but actually it connects well to the conversation we had earlier about athletics. We wanted to create a provision that if we had transportation issues, clarifying that the district provides transportation to school event, where the district provides transportation to school events, that what the expectation is upon return, but also if there are emergency situations where, as we had earlier this year, where not because of anything on the district side, but because a bus company didn't deliver on a bus that was a no-show for an athletic event that had some significant ramifications for our students. So the changes proposed here would then also allow kind of a safety, an alternate plan to be crafted, so that we would not find ourselves in a situation like that where students would be negatively impacted because of a lack of transportation that had been planned for on the part of the district.
What prompted this?
It was really at that specific event made us look at, is there, because we didn't have a way, a bus didn't show for an event. We didn't have the capacity to transport students up differently.
Oh, I see.
So as a result, the students wound up actually having to,
The-
it was
The
forfeiting.
girls' swim team
Yeah.
forfeited on
Yeah.
seniors' night,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, it was a really, really unfortunate situation. We didn't have a figurative vehicle to resolve the situation. So this gives us the ability to do that in rare circumstances, but so that it would have given us the pathway to do that in that moment.
So that's the
That's
first
basically
reading,
it.
and
Yep.
we'll be back for
Yeah.
another
Yep,
review.
second and third, yeah.
Okay, then I would accept a motion to approve items 10.1 through 10.4 as a consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any comments or questions?
Just your basic.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposition? No. All right. Then would accept a motion to approve Schedule D.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and if anybody would like to bring forward any new business?
Not at this point.
No. Then I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well.